Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you all so much for being here. We are, just so y'all know, I'd like to introduce y'all to the BRIC Summit team. It has been a long day of concurrent programming here. Thank you all so much for spending your day with us the past 2 days. We are so excited and energized for all the things that we have heard and learned. And over to you, Alison.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for spending the time with us today. If you were here with us yesterday, we love this time of year. So much great knowledge dropping all day long for 2 days straight. I know brains are fried, and this is the last panel of the day, but home stretch, home stretch. But this is also an opportunity for you all, if you didn't get a chance to ask any questions, and maybe some of the other panels we have our area experts, resident experts for the final home stretch of the BRIC Summit. So I'm going to go around and I'll end with me of my background, but I will kick it off to Stephen to talk about himself, his area of expertise. And then once we get around, then it's up to you, audience, to drive this conversation and figure out. So if you want to start kind of putting some cues in the cue section, we can start answering those are along the way. So kicking it to you, my friend, Steve.
Yay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen Love. I teach at Lawndale High School. I am the career technical education teacher here for film and television. I've been here for 11 years now. I'm a former art director in Local 44. And I'm currently on set with students filming actively while we do this. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I can kind of just show you really quickly. That's them filming right there. That's their set just a little bit. They're actually in there working right now while we're
real
actively
time.
Real time.
We'll kick it to Sam. You want to you can showcase all your reptiles and bunnies, and if you want, no pressure though. No pressure.
That will take us a really long time, but know that there's one right here, and then there's another one off camera. And then there's like 10 more pets in other places. So hi everybody, I'm Sam Goff. My pronouns are she, her, and I am actually partner with Alison Mann at her day job at Fourth Wall Management. Oh, not your day job. You have 2 day jobs. Anyway, with Alison's other job at Fourth Wall Management, where I work as a creative talent manager. I came to that role by way of doing recruiting, and I got to recruiting by way of doing production in the animation space. So I've been an animation person for the last 10 years. It's what I went to school for. It's what my passion is in. And then I also moonlight as an educator. So I teach a vocational animation class with Cal State Long Beach, as well as a animation activism course at my alma mater, Loyola Marymount, where I teach students on how to break the cycle of unconscious bias in animated content. And then I currently sit on the leadership team of Black and Animated as the director of outreach, engagement, and education. So I'm always doing a lot of things.
All the things, all the time. Busy, busy, busy. Love it. Doer. All right. Next to my partner in crime, Nicole.
Hi. You have 2 of my 4 life partners on this chat right now. My husband, Joshua Herman, my Alison Mann BRIC partner. I'm the executive and co-founder of BRIC Foundation. I'm also a producer, came up through live action and went into games. I love freelancing and hustling, so I'm not really great at staying put and staying in my lane. I'm also a co-founder of the Concept Art Association, and I'm just really, I love a lot of people. Steven's one of our pre-apprenticeship teachers. We love Steven and his program. He does a lot of really cool, innovative things. Love Lawndale. And yeah, over to you, Joshua Herman.
Hello, my name is Josh Herman. My background is starting as a 3D modeler. So that's kind of where I started my career. And I worked my way up from 3D modeling in movies and TV, and also some collectibles work, and then into concept art for movies. I worked at Marvel Studios for about 5 years or so on basically all of the MCU Avengers movies from Avengers 1 to Endgame. Designed a bunch of the key characters there. So like characters like Groot and Hulk, and mostly any of the CG characters were things I specialized on. Then I worked in some video games for a little while. I worked on the Uncharted series, and I also worked on Star Citizen for a little bit. Then I worked as the chief creative officer for Noman School of Visual Effects. So kind of understanding the pipeline for students getting into the industry, trying to stay as up to the cutting edge as possible. And then now I am currently the studio art director for Dungeons and Dragons on the RPG. So yeah, that's me.
Yay. And then Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Reid. I am a 2D animator, 3D animator, and director. I've always loved animation, so I started out drawing a lot, and then when I went to the College for Creative Studies, I of course studied animation and was a cinephile, and I loved cinematography and everything, and started studying that as well. But I absolutely love animating characters. So I started working at Gunner, which is a motion design studio, and went freelance in 2020, continued in motion design for a couple of years until I started animating for animated or television animated series. And my most recent project, I guess, was directing a couple episodes of Scavenger's Reign.
Amazing. And Sam and I rep Rachel as well as a director and a creative. I'm Alison Mann, co-founder of the BRIC Foundation. I'm also manager and president of Fourth Wall Management over at Fourth Wall Animation. I've been in animation for over 20 years. I've also worked in gaming. I started off as an artist and then fell into the creative recruiter land, then went into very similar-ish to Miss Sam over there. And then I was in development for a while, and then I became a rep about 2.5 years ago. And so we all have all these amazing backgrounds. We're doing different things. And I think we can, share as much as we can. So let's start dropping those questions in. And I think we have our first one, but from Melissa, maybe.
Mhm.
So what are this group's thoughts on remote employment? Is there anything that we can do as job seekers to make employment opportunities like this more available within the entertainment industry as a whole? I would actually like to start with Rachel, because who doesn't live in Los Angeles, California. Where do you live? Did you mention where you live?
Oh, I forgot. I live in Michigan, a very not, animation place. I live in Detroit, Michigan. Yeah.
And how do you maneuver? Talk about how you maneuver for opportunities.
Oh, goodness. I don't feel like, I don't know what this says, but I don't think I've ever really tried very hard to move anywhere. I think honestly, it was because of the pandemic that like when I decided to go freelance, and that was a really risky thing to do because it was kind of panic for everyone. But because of the pandemic, it felt like remote work was like normal for everybody in the entire world. And so because of that, I feel like I was just working with studios like Titmouse, where they, outsource or like animation to freelancers like me and people in France and Mexico. And it's like, I don't know, it's like if it works that way and we're all working digitally, then it doesn't really feel that necessary to be in one central place, especially since my experience has been just communicating with other animators and directors via Zoom or like Google Hangouts. I don't know what the future may hold. Like maybe at some point as I continue to direct more, that I would be headed toward Los Angeles. but I do think like living there and meeting with other animators and people that you can actually talk to face is an advantage. So I'm still figuring that out, but so far it's working living in Michigan.
How have people been able to find you now that you, I mean, you have reps now, but before you had us, like, how did you create a market for yourself living in Michigan?
Well, so I worked at Gunner, a motion design studio, for 4.5 years. And they were very much acquainted with like Buck and Giant Ant and Oddfellows, other motion design studios across the nation. And so when I went freelance, well, I guess in 2018, I created an Instagram for my work. And I just started posting work there. And a lot of my coworkers, colleagues from Gunner started following me on Instagram. And I started just having a lot of conversations with them and posting my work. And then when I went freelance, I was lucky because Gunner on their Instagram, they said, "Hey, Rachel is going freelance." And then like, you know, it was cool to get some recognition from the other motion design studios. And so when I went freelance, that's when I started getting emails from those studios. And then I guess like also I feel like when I started going into television animation, like the pivotal moment was when I would follow people like Benji Brook or the Rauch brothers, and they would post on their stories like, "Hey, we're looking for like American animators for like We the People on Netflix." And I was like, well, that's awesome because that cuts out like so many other people in the world and I could have a chance to work on that. So I like DM'd Benji and I was like, I want to work on this. And then that's how I got that job. And it was really Instagram, I think, that helped me get work. So
That's
how that
smart.
worked.
I think there's so many opportunities. Like I know that Sam's on TikTok sharing advice a lot. And I think go where the people that have the jobs post things. So whether it's TikTok or Instagram or, you know, they're sharing and they're building teams, especially when things are a bit more either remote or freelance or have a smaller budget. So that's kind of interesting.
So Josh and I want to take that question as well.
Yeah, I was going to pivot to Josh next.
Yeah, well, we've been texting who wants to, because we are married, and when you are both creatives and you're both navigating two careers, it can be hard because you do sometimes have to take turns when one of you gets an opportunity. My husband loves Dungeons and Dragons. Like for like our whole relationship, like that's how I met all of his friends, was actually Allison's husband DMing a game, and that's how I met everyone. And like, not to put Dylan on blast, but my first introduction was all of Josh's friends. We just started dating, and her husband turns to me and is like, "You're in a burning building and you wake up. What do you do?" And I was like, "I don't know." It was very overwhelming. Anyways, point being, my husband loves Dungeons and Dragons. So when this job opportunity came up, which he cold applied to, by the way, just like on a whim, and it was like, "Yeah, we like you. You have to move to Seattle." I was hard no. I was like, everybody is still virtual. Like, why can't we commute? Like, why, you know? And it was not really an option. Like, it was like, if you want this dream job, this thing that you love so much that you get to like be like, you got to move. And so we moved.
Is she muted?
Nicole.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Yeah, we lost your sound.
I thought I had lost internet for a minute. I had
Where
a
did it cut
Yeah,
out?
same.
I don't know.
I
But
don't-
there's
we
some hand
moved.
gestures.
I was
did
telling
this.
everybody should be in therapy. That's good to know. So maybe my AirPod didn't want me to say that. But anyways, point being,
General advice.
yeah, I commute. So I'm in LA like 3 days a month. We both come down for events. Most people don't know I live in Seattle. I bet you didn't know I live in Seattle, right? So I think it's really like, it is what you make of it, right? And so navigating. And Josh, I just talked about our lives. Please share +1. You love Seattle. I think it's great.
I do, yeah. I'll just kind of get back to the heart of the question, which is like what about having a career, right? And how do you get a career, and how can you make that part of the industry as a whole? Which I think is more about which you both kind of talked about, but I think that the most difficult part of getting your foot in the door and getting your first gigs is actually the networking and the connections part of it. So that's why being in a location like in LA is talked about, or go to a school with people, or go to be around in LA or something like that. Once you have connections, I've found, and you have friends and ways to kind of get ins, it's a little easier after that. But the first part is really difficult. So events like this, like Nicole was saying, like we don't live in LA. None of us are meeting in person right now. Like we can all meet virtually. You can make those connections now, and there's so many more communities online with Discords and things like that that it's easier to do that. Speaking from where I work right now in D&D, a lot of our team is remote or works in different time zones, and so I think that the industry as a whole is still, I think, struggling, but also in some ways embracing remote work, depending on like the sector, I guess, that you're in. Like I think animation seems to be dealing with it pretty well. I work in book publishing, so there are times when we do have to be in person to see physical items, which I think is different than other industries. So I think it really just depends on what industry you're in, where you're looking, and what kind of connections you're looking for.
Thanks for sharing. Let's move on to another question. This one is from Sophia, for people who've moved between the gaming industry and the animation industry. I'm interested in concept art, visual development in both industries, but I've always been told I need to focus on one. What is your advice and perspective? Sam, thoughts?
I do have thoughts. So while the skills are definitely transferable between phys dev and concept art for gaming versus series or feature, what you have to realize is that these are two completely different industries, meaning that the people who do like the recruiting and all the work for gaming, and the people who do the recruiting and that kind of work for animation aren't necessarily crossing paths. They're not going to the same conferences. They're not collaborating with each other in the same way that they do internally. So if you are looking to do either one, that means that the kind of networking and outreach work that you're doing, you're going to have to do twice the work. You're going to have to do that geared towards people who work in gaming, and do that geared towards people who work in film and series. There's no problem with doing that. It's just understanding who your audience is and how to best reach them. I also suggest having slightly different portfolios, because what you're going to show off when you're designing video game assets versus what you're going to show off when you're designing film assets is, again, like transferable skills on how to make them, but nuanced differences on what that actually looks like in a portfolio. And so being able to showcase that and show that you understand the needs of the job that you're applying for, rather than just having these ideals of the industry and what you think they want, but truly understanding what they're looking for more specifically.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. And Stephen, I saw you nodding your head quite a bit in agreement to Sam's amazing intel, but I would love, as a educator and somebody who's been an art director, like, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hearing Sam talk about the nuances in your portfolio work is very important, and that's something that I, get my students to really try to understand, that we're tailoring our resumes and tailoring our portfolios for the jobs that we're trying to get. So you might have all these skills, but you don't necessarily need to add that all in one package. So yeah, I was definitely agreeing with that, because that's something we talk about.
Fantastic. There's a question I'm not sure how to answer, but it's around any suggestions for someone looking to consult work in artist development at studios. There are certain positions like artist managers that maybe would be aligned with the position of kind of what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to help with development, which is original IPs and design skills, That could be a development position or even a agent manager rep sort of role. So I think there's probably not one kind of consult for an artist, but there's potentially positions within the studio system that could fit there. Anybody have any other thoughts? Nicole, Josh, Sam, specifically?
Manager, producer, sort of different, sort
Hmm.
of not necessarily like traditionally like creative roles, like manager, assistant, like the like manager, producer, executive producer. There's like sort of operations. There's like huge parts of actual building the company that are, or creative work that are not creative work. So if you want to be in a creative field, but maybe you don't feel like you're a super creative, there's still all of the other people that make that whole structure work. So that's like a huge section that I would look into.
Cool. Thank you. Stephanie has a question about kind of the pressure and stress of finding a job. I would love to start with Rachel and move to Sam to answer this question. So it's basically getting the first gig. How do you deal with the stress and press to find the gig, especially in a field as competitive as animation? The job hunt is scary, and honestly, as a fresh graduate, I want to know if it's normal to feel the urge to take a break from working on a portfolio updates after finishing art studies instead of needing to feel like I need to submit an application every day.
I really resonate with this question. Well, yeah, like the stress is very real. Like I'm not gonna lie and say that I have never been stressed out, you know, and then, you know, there are times where I'm like, oh, like I'm just gonna stop, you know. But luckily I didn't. And a lot of that is just like when you're in school, you're working so hard and you're building your portfolio and you're going to places like CTN and it sometimes when you're in that student position and you haven't gotten your first gig yet, it really does feel like the line between student and professional is just thick, you know. I mean, that was how I felt when I went to CTN. And then it just felt like, you know, networking, it all just felt very daunting. So I can't say that like working at a motion design studio was like the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me. Like that was like the last kind of animation that I wanted to do, but that was my first job because I had, oh, CTN is what does it stand for? I forgot.
Creative Talent Network, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like a convention for like animation and visual development. But like I didn't want to start in motion design but I did because I knew there was like a local studio that just opened up that needed like a 2D animator. And it was like, I mean, I didn't know, I was kind of just taking one day at a time, seeing what I could do for that studio. And then as that studio grew, I grew because I was just putting out work. I wasn't trying to do it on my spare time. So so like your first job, I don't really know how I got that job. I just knew that it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't in LA, it wasn't in New York, it was local in Michigan, but I grew a lot from it and I ended up enjoying the work that I did do. And then but I was there for 5 years, like 3 years longer than I wanted to be because I didn't know what to do next. Because like, okay, I have a lot of motion design work. That's gonna get me more motion design. I wanted to do more characters. I wanted to do more narrative. So it was really stressful and feeling stuck is very difficult. But I found that like the more work that I did at Gunner, that was interesting to me that I wanted to put on my Instagram, like the more I was able to actually network through that social media platform, if that makes sense. And that's really how I was able to network and see what other jobs more experienced people had out there. Because there's so many like things or posts on Instagram that's like, oh, we're hiring for this, or I'm working on a short film, a personal film. It might not pay anything, but it's like, I'm looking for people who want to animate on this, and then you can just like DM them or something. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but
No, it's good. It's great.
yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I am gonna answer with a story about myself. Because I don't know who, like, the situation of the person who asked this question, but for a lot of people who come from marginalized backgrounds, we've got a lot of things going on in our lives that keep us from being able to focus solely on our art. So for me, I was working as a PA, but I wanted to transition over into being an artist. But I have a single parent immigrant mother who cannot afford to give me any money. She doesn't help me at all. I've been financially dependent since I left for college. And so I had bills to pay. So I was working all day as a PA. I was taking Tupperware to work and putting lunch into Tupperware so that I could then take it home and have food for dinner. And I was driving for Uber at nights in order to pay my car payments. I literally had to make my car pay for itself. And then I was taking night classes or working on my portfolio, doing what I had to do to try to improve and to get that that artist job. And so I started to feel this sense of discouragement as I saw people who weren't hustling as hard as I was starting to make inroads in their careers. So they were starting to make the transition from production into art, or they were starting to move up the ranks in their careers. And here I am stuck at this place as I am grinding. And I eventually had to learn to give myself permission to have my own path and to realize that there are not enough hours in the day, and I am a human being who needs to sleep. And so it would be impossible for me to do the things that my peers who were getting help, the help that I wasn't getting, I can't do what they're doing. And so it's okay that it's taking me longer to get that first job. It's okay that it's taking me longer to get that dream job. You know, my path looked a lot different and it took longer. But the fact of the matter is that I found a work-life balance that allowed me to sustain, allowed me to keep going so that I didn't burn out and give up and quit and stop. And so that's my suggestion to all of you, is to find that good work-life balance so that you have the energy to have that tenacity. And as long as you keep at it, you're eventually going to get there. But don't put any pressure on yourself of like when it has to happen, and instead focus on how you can make it happen and how you can take care of yourself so that you can get there.
Awesome. Thank you. Nicole, Josh, Stephen, anything
Yeah.
to add?
It is very rare to have a linear career. It is very rare to go from this is what I want to do in college, this is what I want my first job to be, and then to just go straight up, right? A lot of careers, specifically careers where you're a caregiver, it's their spaghetti, right? And you do bring that different thing into you, right? Like I learned this skill here, I learned that skill, now I'm freelancing in this thing, but like it does all build towards itself, and it doesn't mean that there's any, like, it's not as worth as much someone that went the traditional route. Like it's just, a career can look so many ways and all of them are valid.
Fantastic. I'm going to answer a couple questions kind of quickly. One about, I got a rejection email from a recruiter. Know when you get these rejection emails from recruiters or companies, they're all templates. But the thing to also know is recruiting in creative is like casting. So if you're an actor going on an audition, like, and you see a lot of people that kind of look like you, there's a call out. That is kind of the same thing. So if Avatar: The Last Airbender is looking for a visual development artist, they're going to look for portfolios and artists that can replicate that style. And so if you don't have that, then you're going to get a nice rejection that says you have a great background and experience, but ultimately it's just not a fit. So don't take those rejections personal. It is really the same thing as casting. They're looking for a very specific fit. So something to keep in mind is having that observational kind of sensibility to your own kind of work as you're navigating.
Josh, can you tap in on that about what you're looking for with artists when you're hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think Allison summed it up really well, which is it is a lot like casting. And I mean, I've gotten a lot of those types of rejection emails as well. You know, maybe I was poking around and seeing jobs and applying to them. And, you know, at the time, I think my art was very live action, you know, realistic stuff that would fit in a movie. And so applying to a place like a Blizzard or a Riot and getting a relatively quick rejection email of just like, sorry, you have a good portfolio, but we don't see that you fit here is challenging to receive. And you know, if you're an artist who's reaching out, don't, you know, I put this in another comment in the chat actually above of somebody who was looking for live action work. It is a lot like casting, and put your, you know, it's just like casting. It's also like put a good first impression out there from a portfolio standpoint. So if you're applying to a live action, just like we were talking about having multiple portfolios, if you're applying to live action, use live action. If you're using a game portfolio, there may be different types of genres or visuals of games. You use a portfolio that applies to that if you have that. And if you want to try to get into something that you don't have work for, you'll probably have to make it yourself first. You'll have to build up a portfolio to be able to submit one.
There's a kind of a piggybacking question from Sophia about like, how do you balance out showing your style in a portfolio while also showing that you can replicate their style? Or should you forfeit trying to show your own style in a portfolio depending on where you're trying to apply? Do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, I think that really depends on where you're applying and how hard of a style they have. If they're looking for a specific thing, if they're a place that kind of does lots of different kinds of things. You know, I think a good example might be something like Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog makes realistic, live, real looking games, right? So if you're going to submit a portfolio to a Naughty Dog, but you have work that looks like you mostly play Blizzard games, they're going to reject you immediately, just kind of right out of there, right? So if you're saying like, how do you balance showing your own style versus what a style of somewhere else is? There sort of has to be a match at a certain point, as far as I see it, or you are like your kind of follow-up question is, Sophia, I think forfeiting is maybe the wrong word, but I would say like that's not the point of what you're trying to get that job for, right? You're trying to be a professional working artist in that situation for one company doing that thing versus just making your own style and making your own art. And there's validity and good in both. So continue building up your own style. But I guess if you're trying to apply to specific jobs that have real styles, there is a reality, at least in my opinion, of that you do have to try to get close to get a better shot.
Stephen, Nicole, Rachel, anything to add on this topic? While I search for
I said this earlier, and it's been messing with me all day because I think I phrased it in a not nice way. But when I was looking for jobs, because I have that messy spaghetti career, that makes sense to me but it doesn't necessarily make sense to a recruiter or to a hiring manager. And so one of the things that I really struggled with was like deleting my experience and making myself smaller and custom fitting my resume to the actual job that I was going on. And it's not necessarily making myself smaller, but it's simplifying myself so a recruiter or a software won't reject me. And I think it can be really hard because I'm so proud of my messy experience of a life and it all makes sense. But like having someone in your life that can help you edit down things that don't necessarily match, and then like really truly rewriting your resume for the jobs that you're applying for. Like it was a pride thing, right? Like, so I think just like knowing that if you're slimming yourself down to get that job, like that it doesn't reflect upon you. It's just making yourself simple so you can be hired.
I think also to that point, when you're starting out, like Avery had this question about what qualities about an applicant for internships or entry level. So it's like almost in the reverse, right? It's like you're trying to build yourself up so that you can show that you can do the job. So what do you think about that, Nicole? Like what is, like how do you make your resume stand out in the sea of hundreds of applicants? And maybe Stephen, as you're working with students, like what do you kind of tell them?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Just a quick to go back a little bit. Something that I do with my students is that I have them apply for jobs that they know that they're not going to get, so they can receive that rejection, so they can kind of build their grit a bit, so they can have the courage to keep trying. So when they do, experience rejection a little bit later, it's like, okay, it doesn't hit as hard. They know that, hey, just keep going. In that moment, you can keep building those skills. But to go with that question of how do you make yourself stand out? I have hundreds of students, and one of the main things that I have them embed into their portfolios is just their personality. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the best version of yourself, and it's either going to resonate or maybe not, but that doesn't mean you stop. So the idea of just keeping that your personality into your work and your portfolio, I think is something that I try to ingrain with them, and that's something that employers are when they sit on our advisory boards, they kind of mention it's not always about the skill necessarily, especially at entry level type positions, but they're looking a little bit more for like, are you a good fit for our team? Can you blend in with what we're trying to do here? Do we have the same type of synergy? So that's something that I have them look out for.
That's all. In high school, I started rescuing seals at the Marine Mammal Rescue Center in Sausalito. I did it for 3 years. And when I applied for my internship at Nickelodeon, there was a bunch of people that like were animal lovers. And that is the thing that set me apart, because I was going to school all the way in Columbia College in Chicago, and I had to make my way very quickly if I got the internship in LA. And they pulled my resume because of the fact that I did something different. It like stood out. So I think also like things like doing things that obviously that you want to do for your career, but also things that might fill your bucket and show personality and like more depth than like what your curiosities are. I think that can help stand out. Sam, Nicole, I think
do.
say something.
Yeah. Joining the clubs, right? Like if I see like Asians Animation, Black and Animated, all of our partners on there on your resume that you're a member of, or that you did a mentorship or whatever training program, I'm more likely to flag that because I know I can get a referral, because it is about like, what is that person's perspective on you? So I do recommend joining clubs that fit you, that makes sense. So for you have more support, more job opportunities, but B, also communicating that you're a part of that.
Yeah, so jumping in, and I'm going to try to be as concise as possible because I literally teach an entire semester course on this very question. But in a nutshell, it is doing your research and knowing what the job is. So many people who are looking at entry-level jobs are applying for what they think the job is for or what the job does, but they don't actually do the research and understand what the job truly is. And so then they're not being taken seriously. So figuring out that part. So for example, if you're applying for an internship position at most studios, an intern position is within production management or some other kind of overhead. It's not an artist job. But a lot of people want to work as artists. And so they apply and they're like, here's my portfolio and here's all the art classes I've taken. And I'm like, I can't hire you for an internship. This is an artist portfolio, and it's okay to be an artist who wants to get a job as an intern, but apply for the internship. And it's not as difficult as it may seem. You can have absolutely no experience and still use, or no relevant experience, no animation experience, and still use the experience you do have to get your foot in the door. So I always use the example of, let's say you were the shift manager at Starbucks as a barista, and you worked the morning rush. Your resume can say, I worked the morning rush as shift manager. I oversaw 3 employees. I gave great customer service. The end. And then me, as someone looking for an intern or a PA, like, cool, you can make coffee. That doesn't help me, right? But what you could say instead is, I worked collaboratively with a team of 3. I managed a high level of now I'm losing my professional speak. It's been a long weekend, y'all. But I was able to prioritize and multitask. I was able to provide good customer service in a high pressure environment. You're describing both things now. You're describing what you did at the Starbucks job in a way that's going to resonate for someone who's going to hire you for an office job. And you're still saying the same thing, but it's how you spin it. You got to make the connections for me rather than assuming that I'm going to make those like logical leaps, those connections, because I'm looking at 300 resumes. I don't have the brain power. I don't have the time to kind of think deeply and critically about those things. You have to spell it out for me.
Thanks. That's really good advice. Rachel, there's a question in there about showing personality in a portfolio along with like trying to get the job that you want. Like how do you show you in your art? Like, and then also get the job that you want that might have a specific style.
That's really interesting. Well, okay. Well, so far my career has, I feel like the jobs that I've loved so far has been during my freelance career, and I've been lucky enough to be, I didn't have to go out and inquire too much because of the motion design networking. But as far as like my portfolio, I just created art that I wanted to see for myself, you know, like my style wasn't necessarily like the look of the characters or like the aesthetic of my work. It was more so the way I animated was kind of my style. So my portfolio, I just animate in my style, but the animation is like, I don't know, like the work encompassed a broad array of designs of like different characters. But honestly, like as far as I kind of just for my own mental health and getting jobs, I'm just doing the work for me, you know. Like I'm not comparing it to anybody else. If I see another artist that's amazing, who's way better than me, I don't necessarily compare like, oh, they're so much better than me. It's like, no, let me look. If I can frame by frame their animation, I will see what they're doing and try to apply it to my work. But I'm always comparing myself to myself. So I don't feel like that pressure to like, I need to get this job, because it's like, I feel like for me, it's like it puts so much on my mind, and I just feel like if I'm just content comparing myself to myself and seeing myself improve, then and putting it out there just because I want everyone to see what I did because I love it so much, then I'm just hoping that someone will see that. And that's kind of how I'm operating right now, because I haven't gone to apply for a specific job like at a like Pixar or anything since I was like in school. and probably because of all the rejections. And I feel so much more comfortable in freelance and just doing the best I can with whatever job I have, even if it's like not exactly what I want, but it's like if I put my personality and my animation style into it, if I'm just pleasing myself more so than the person I'm working for, then I feel like I could get more work that I want. And hopefully it leads me to like my dream job, which also changes a lot for me. The more experience I have, the more I want to experience, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, it
that's like a
informs.
weird way to answer
Yeah.
that question.
No, it's
Sorry.
great because it informs kind of
Yeah.
your visual language that you're trying to put in. Josh, I'm curious to hear from you about it, like as somebody who's been an artist and now who hires artists, like what does that balance look like?
Sorry, I was taking care of my son for a minute. What was the original question?
It had to do with like how do you like if you're a visual development artist, how do you balance showcasing like your
Oh,
personal and then
yeah, I put a little note in the chat for this one. I think that like what you were saying, Rachel, is very true that you should like you're doing your art for yourself typically, or you're doing it for school or a presentation. And if you're doing it for a school or presentation, you should also be doing it for yourself to be more interested in it. So your portfolio should be full of your personality. Like it should be full of your art, and your art should be presenting in a way a picture of who you are or what your personality is. It shouldn't be like a sterile, clinical, boring, soulless thing to look at. It should be you. So I guess just make sure that that's what it is. Like, if you look at your portfolio, maybe the question you should ask is, does this feel like me? Does this authentically feel like me? Is this what I want to be presenting? And you can say that in lots of different scenarios, but if you're worried about not feeling like you're coming through, maybe that's what I would say.
cool. And then Nicole, there's a question in here that is, I currently work part-time on a production line in a roofing plant. Can I relate that experience to applying for an animation production job? Like, does that align to being a producer?
It
Production.
depends on what those actual job duties are. Like, what is that job duty, right? Like, so one of the things I love is finding baby producers in the wild. And I need to again stop calling them that. But like, I'm from a big family. When I'm talking to people that are just, maybe recent high school grads, community college kids, it's like, oh, you're the oldest child. How do you go on vacation? Are you the one that organizes things? If you're going to like, are you on time? Is your love language spreadsheets? Do you love calendars? Like there's certain things that are just translatable skills. So I wouldn't worry about production roofline. It's what are you doing? Are you organizing humans? Are you making a schedule for people? Like what is it that you are doing?
Cool. That's great. And then for Stephen and Sam, I want to talk about cover letters with resumes. I obviously have my own opinions, but would love to start with Stephen, especially for entry-level humans coming in and like whether it's applications for college or jobs, like what's that structure look like in your opinion?
Structure of creating a resume, or
do cover letters matter with resumes? And if so, what is the structure
yes,
for a cover letter?
yeah. So definitely when the students are applying to college, they're doing their college essays, and yeah, they do matter. I can't speak from the business perspective, or at least employment perspective, but when it comes to structuring, we tailor ours based on your brag sheet, right? So like you figure out what are you really good at, what are your skills, what have you done in the past that's just like really makes you stand out, and then let's figure out how to put that into words and get that onto paper. So that's ours is obviously a lot more tailored down to high school students, so it's not quite that broad, and they have a lot of times the things that should kind of piggyback off of what Nicole was saying, things that you've done outside that may not quite line up, but you're organizing humans, or you're managing something that's not, you may not think is managing, but we try to find those skills and say, hey, let's broaden that description or that definition of what it might be. So
Well, thanks. Sam?
Yeah, +1 to everything Stephen just said. So if you're going for a creative position, like if you're applying for a creative position, then a cover letter is honestly not worth your time. The most important thing is going to be your portfolio, secondarily, social media and resume. Now, if you're going for an internship or a PA position or some kind of overhead job that isn't a creative one where no portfolio is necessary, then primarily is going to be your resume, and then secondarily maybe social media and cover letter. And then I say typically cover letters are not important at all until they are. Meaning, as a recruiter, I don't have a lot of time to go through and read a essay from 300 applicants. That's going to take way too long. So I'm making my decisions mostly based off of the resume. However, when I get stuck, if I've got 4 candidates and I need to whittle it down to 2, and I can't decide off of what I've seen on the resumes and what I've seen in their social media, then I'm going to read those cover letters. And that's when I'm going to make a decision. So for me, it's like, usually I'm not looking at them, but when I do look at them, it's to help me make a decision. I'm going there for a very specific reason. And so because of that, when you're writing your cover letter, and if you're going for a job that doesn't require a portfolio, I think you absolutely 100% should include one. And what it should do is not beg for the job, not telling the studio how great they are, but instead explaining to them how you can help. Right? So your resume has listed out your experience, and the bullet points are talking about the experience you have in a way that resonates for the job. Now you have the cover letter where you can expand on that. Go more in depth about what that barista job was like and the skills you utilize, the skills that I listed in the job description I wanted. Tell me about how you use those very skills to problem solve or to be successful in your Starbucks barista job. That's what you do in your cover letter. You're painting a picture, you're connecting the dots, and that's giving me more personality, and that's making who you are and what you can bring to me in the position much clearer.
Thank you, Sam. We have about a few minutes left. I just want to go around, and I think Nicole Hodge had a really good question about making a good first impression. I know, Nicole, you answered a bit of it, but I would love to start with you, Stephen, and your thoughts of like, you're getting out there, you're networking, you're afraid to network. It's very nerve-wracking. You have imposter syndrome. It's really real. Like, how do you what is your advice for making that first good impression and then maintaining a relationship?
Yes. First, take a deep breath. That's one. Start there, just breathe. And I think, it's cliche, but just being yourself. Honestly, I think when you try to pretend to be something that you're not, that people kind of see through that. So being yourself and being honest with what you know and what you don't know. I noticed a lot of my students get a lot of work, when they tell their employers, hey, I don't know that, but I'm going to look it up. So, being yourself and being honest with what you know and what you don't. People respect that.
Thank you. Sam.
I like to advocate for lowercase n networking instead of capital N networking. And what I mean by that is, instead of being in a very formal situation where you walk up to someone and you shake their hand and you hand them a business card and you're like, hello, I am Sam Goff and I'm looking for work. That's terrible. Everybody hates that, right? But lowercase n networking is, you go to a mixer or you're at a convention, you're at a drink and draw, and you're just sitting there talking to people, shooting the shit, and you exchange information, and boom, you now have an industry contact. You know, that is networking, going out and making friends in the community, whether they're people who are in hiring positions or people who are just doing the job or people who are like you, who are students or other people trying to break in. All of those connections are important and all of those connections can help. And so just being a part of the community. And that also means that you can do it incredibly or entirely virtually for those people who aren't in LA. Discord is a great place to build a community, but if you're not a Discord user, you can still do it with social media. So lowercase n networking and just make friends.
Nicole.
I want to share my favorite Discord server that's free. It's the Lightbox Expo one. Let's get it is public. Can I send to a friend? Yes. Okay. You please, like, this is a really wonderful Discord server because there's always like virtual events, there's networking, people from all over the world. A lot of things are done via Discord if you're not in the LA area.
Anything else to add? That one?
I'm so tired. Thank you all
Okay.
for being
All right.
here.
Rachel. Muted.
Sorry. Okay. I guess for me, like, I just stopped putting people on a pedestal. Like, I just, it's like I meet someone who's had 20 years of experience at Pixar or whatever. It's like, you're a human being. I'm meeting you at the same level. Because I feel like as soon as I, worship them and I'm like, oh, like when I'm going to them just for a job, I just feel like I'm trying too hard. It's like, I'll be your friend. Let's be friends because I admire you. I admire your work and hopefully we can stay in touch. But for me, I don't expect anything out of it because I know I'm going to do my part, which is do my own work, do it for me. So I feel like that's healthier for me to interact with people. Like I kind of see us on the same playing field. Some people have more experience, but we're all just human beings and we all love art. So if no one ever hires me, I'm still going to be happy doing the work myself. And I'm going to just take classes online. And for me, that's all I really need because I kind of feel like I have to take my identity out of getting a job. I'm not saying just don't give up on your dreams, of course, but like just be kind to yourself and do it because you love it. And I really do believe that that's going to lead to places and that's going to lead you to people. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. Josh.
So first impression with a portfolio or first impression in general?
Either or.
I can go portfolio. And this
Great.
is kind of what I put in the chat, but for everybody as well. On portfolios, especially if you're wanting to get into junior or intern stuff, what I recommend is only show your good stuff and only show, like, this is part of making a good first impression, right? If you have 3 really great pieces, that's enough to get you a job. If you have 6 average pieces, that's not enough to get you a job. Like, you need to have really great stuff that's going to stand out. Just that's how it works, right? So, and to break that down even further, that plays into your mindset, like and it breaks down to like sort of the abstract concept of time. So if I have 6 pieces that I worked on and I spent 40 hours on each, but I have 3 that I worked on 80 hours on each, they're going to be better, and you spent the same amount of time, right? And that one will get you a job and this one won't. So focus on the good ones that you have. And maybe you have 4 in your portfolio and 3 are really great and 1 is average. Cut the average one. Make the impression as good as it possibly can. And if they want to see more, they'll ask you for more. But start with the best first impression you can in your portfolio and only show good stuff.
Love
If
it.
someone has a bad piece in their portfolio and really good pieces, does it make you question if they know what good is?
Yes. Because I want to know if you have a bad piece in your portfolio or 3 or 5 out of 5 and 1 is a 2 out of 5, which just by the way, as an artist happens. Not every day is a perfect day. Not every film's the best thing you've ever made. Like, they're not all equal, right? So it's okay to not have everything always be great when you make it. But if I see a portfolio that's got 3 stellar pieces and 1 subpar pieces, I'm going to say, why? First off, why is that in there? Do you have bad taste and you don't know it? Were you art directed really heavily on these other 3? Were these student pieces maybe that you got a lot of extra help from your teacher on? Why is this in here is the first question I'm going to ask. And that's the exact opposite thing you want to do in a portfolio. And a first impression is make me wonder why you put this in there versus, oh, these are all really great.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you for bringing us home for the 2024 BRIC Summit. You all are amazing. Great advice, great audience. We appreciate you sticking with us and hanging out with us and being with us for this year, and hope to see you next year. We really appreciate you all. Thank you, Nicole.
everyone.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, congratulations. You did it.